So over a lifetime, I mean, what's the typical age when someone locks into you guys? We're talking about 30s?
I'd say our average client age is probably actually late 30s, early 40s, but our youngest was like 19. So we had a real hungry bloke there trying to do it. And our oldest was 74.
But on average, or the median is around late 30s.
Yeah.
So we're talking about late 30s. So let's say you're, I don't know, for argument's sake, 35, and you just go along to Atlas and you start off your journey. By the time that individual's 65, I mean, what are we talking about here? That's 30 years. We're talking about like one property every 8 years or something like that. I mean, what's the sort of cycle look like?
I'd say from our experience doing it with clients, as long as they come in, they don't have to be completely clean skinned with no debt and they've just sort of, existed in the world and nothing else. They don't have to be like that. But, the less consumer debt they have, the better, because it is going to have a commensurate impact on their borrowing power. Well, I would say over the space of probably 10 years, we could probably, for an average person, right? Nobody with crazy incomes or anything like that. I'd say for the average person, it helps out if it's a couple as well, because you've got two incomes. I'd say sort of four to five properties.
That's one every 2 years.
Yeah, and I'd say that in the earlier days, there's maybe a little bit of a longer time frame between, but then when you get to the back end where incomes have compounded, rents have compounded as well, equity is compounded too, and you're just you're in a 10-year better financial situation, or maybe an 8-year better scenario, you have potentially a better ability to then grow a bit faster. So kind of that exponential graph sort of idea, where slower at the start, but then as you get further through, you can tick up a lot faster.
Right. So because you hear these stories about these guys that get up on stage and they say, I've got 100 properties and I'm 30 years of age, and there's to me, mathematically, there's something wrong with that. I don't know how they qualified under the servicing calculators that the lenders use to do that. It makes me think they've got another big source of income somewhere or something like that. It doesn't really matter how much equity you got. You've got to be able to service the debt from a lender's point of view. So I get a bit, I don't know whether they're very good sort of showcases from my point of view. If someone sort of can do one new property every 3 years, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, because the things that depend on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the things that you're depending on in that circumstance is assuming you're not going to win and going to get an inheritance, or you don't make some brilliant investment in the stock market and, quadruple your money. Assuming you just plod along, you got your salary, you got your wage or whatever it is you're earning, got a little business, and it's incrementally growing. The average wage in this country grows at 4 or 5% per annum. Let's say the rents have grown crazy over the last couple of years, but rents, generally speaking, growing at about 5% per annum, generally speaking. In order to put yourself in a position where you've got, say, enough equity in the property, in other words, the property value has gone up to give you, which means you don't have to come up with another deposit, but you need to borrow the whole lot to buy the next property. That means your income has to go up, including your rents, and the rent for the proposed property has to go up to a level where you can show the lender that you can service the debt. It would seem to me that mathematically every 3 years is doable for an average person. And if you're 30 and you want to retire at 65, that means you can do 10 properties.
Yeah.
And 10 properties when you're 65, that's a lot of real estate.
Massive amount.
And a lot of capital gain too, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, in that as well, and assuming you got your own home as well. So that's a pretty good system. So Atlas's thesis is about, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, is about building or customizing a portfolio strategy to build a portfolio over time, so you can retire with whatever you can optimize, optimize out of all the variables: wages, property growth, prices, interest rates, cost of living increases, all the things that are the inputs into working out how much you can borrow at any one particular time. Does that be about right?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. And I think you hit the nail on the head with it takes time. Like, we have that many people who come and chat with us and they'll say, we've got no properties, we earn a relatively normal amount of income. Like, even if they're in the top proportion or more top proportion, say top 10% of income, for example, and it's a household of 200 or 250. So that's only two people earning 100 grand, right? Which isn't a lot these days compared to where it was 10 or 20 years ago. But they'll come to us with nothing and they'll say, oh, we want 100 grand of passive income in 10 years. And we have to have that hard conversation of saying, we can get you 100 grand, but it's not going to be inflation adjusted. So really it's maybe like 60. And then even past that, there's probably going to be a lot of risk taken on. Like realistically, it's going to take you maybe 15 or 20 years to
100
build
of
that.
income is like a 5% returns, $5 million worth of real estate.
It's
something like that.
Yeah,
it's
a
lot of money.
Yeah, it's a
real
fair
estate.
chunk, right?
Yeah,
exactly right. And
which means there's a lot of debt too.
Exactly right.
There's a couple $1 million worth of debt in that.
Yeah. So, we often have to have those tough conversations, right? Where people, and to your point earlier, where there's these gurus out there and people who talk about building something crazy and, there's often more behind the story